Ontario Premier Doug Ford has announced the province's latest effort to push back against U.S. tariffs. Effective today, Ontario will apply a 25% surcharge on all energy exports to the United States. The Ontario government says this charge will add an average of $100 per month to American bills and bring in about $300,000 to $400,000 in revenue per day for Ontario. The surcharge will affect energy consumers from Michigan, Minnesota, and New York, and Premier Ford says that 25% surcharge might just be the start.
We will apply maximum pressure to maximize our leverage. Let me be clear. I will not hesitate to increase this charge. If necessary, if the United States escalates, I will not hesitate to shut the electricity off completely.
Ontario Energy Minister Stephen Lecce joins me now. Minister, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
You threatened to do this electricity tariff, and you're going ahead with it. Have you heard anything back from New York, Minnesota, Michigan since making this move official?
Well, the system operators in the U.S. have all said that they're concerned about the move because it affects reliability of the market, and it also could lead to higher prices for Americans, which is exactly the opposite of what President Trump campaigned on. So it's still early, but I think the indications are that this is not something that helps them secure energy, which creates pain and complication for them. It is regretful that we're doing this to American people, but we have no choice given one man's decision to levy an unprecedented and illegal tariff on Canada, from softwood to dairy to manufacturing. Literally, the list goes on. Every day, it's a different sector that he's trying to attack and fundamentally undermine. So if this is necessary, we do this, and 25% is the first step. Keeping in mind, David, we can level this up, meaning if there's another attack or an imposition of another tariff, we can go up from 25% up and down according to our national interest, and to send a message that we're going to stand up for ourselves as Canadians.
Okay, I want to just talk about that because President Trump has said in his executive order slapping the tariffs on Canada, there's a retaliation clause and an escalator clause that if Canada were to hit back, he says he would raise his rates. You're saying you're prepared to do exactly the same thing, that this 25% electricity tax could go up. And I saw the Premier saying that he's willing to shut it off completely if the U.S. escalates. So what's the tipping point for shutting it off? What would their escalation have to get to before you went that far?
You know, we're not there yet, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves other than recognizing that it's an option on the table. I mean, we're not going to remove that from our negotiating posture with the U.S. We can do that, and we will do that if we must. Currently, we want to work with the U.S. and make clear to them that this 25% surcharge roughly brings in $300,000 to $400,000 a day. Those dollars will be levied and accrued and put back to support Canadian businesses in Ontario manufacturing and families. So we are going to wait and see how the U.S. reacts, keeping in mind we didn't start this trade war. We don't want this war. We'd rather actually be selling more power. I was working on a plan in the fall. You and I talked about this, right, about actually powering up, like literally building generation, nuclear power to sell into the U.S. and to monetize this incredible commodity for economic good. But in the meantime, we're going to tariff or impose the surcharge at 25%, bring in money for Ontario, put those dollars back into the pockets of our families and businesses taking a haircut from this tariff. And we'll be prepared to react up or down according to what happens in the U.S. If what we want is the president to eliminate the tariff, to use the renegotiated USMCA as the off-ramp to this, what I think is fair to call a crisis and of the markets and confidence for investors, and to end this chaos. So let's use the USMCA to create tariff-free access into both of our economies. If we have to tweak the deal, so be it. Let's get at the negotiating table today, opposed to this erratic behavior that is setting the markets, $3 trillion of economic loss.
Yeah, on the S&P 500 for sure. I mean, the $300,000 to $400,000 a day that you're talking about, you're going to take in. That's on all of the electricity that goes across the border to all three states. So it's about $100 a month, as I understand it, to the end user in terms of a household. $100 isn't nothing, and I'm assuming is that in American dollars or Canadian dollars? I mean, what kind of pain, I guess, you hope that inflicts on the American consumer in terms of motivating them to apply pressure on the president?
You know, I think in isolation, we need a multitude of actions to create pressure. And we're a subnational government. We're the province of Ontario. Yes, we're the largest economic powerhouse in the country, but we can't do this alone. And so the federal government has a critical role to play with respect to export controls and tariffs and international trade policy. So they are leading, and they need to keep leading in this respect and acting. But we have not, as a country, federally, provincially, even municipally, sat back. We've all imposed retaliatory actions to stand up for this country, to send a signal to our American partners or to the American president that we are not going to hope for the best, and we're not going to take him at his word. We've already been burned a few times, and so that's why this policy exists. Plus the LCBO. I mean, let's remind ourselves, the largest alcohol purchaser on earth is the LCBO, $1 billion of investment. The former leader of the House, in Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, who's still a congressional leader, came out opposing the tariff on Canada. The governor of that state came out opposing the tariff. Republicans, Democrats, you're seeing a consensus of people who have the courage to speak up to the president to say this is a ridiculous, unfounded, illegal attack on your largest Democratic trading partner, and thus it needs to be repealed. And that's why we think the renegotiated USMCA is the way to go.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell is the leader of the Senate, just for people back home. Not the leader of the House. Just I don't want to demote former Senator McConnell. He was former leader of the Senate. Look, I want to ask you about comments that your premier made about the Premier of Alberta today. He quoted Daniel Smith. This is what Doug Ford said. As Premier Smith said in her comments in the last couple of days, she has the trump card when talking about fossil fuels. Well, a message to Premier Smith: one day you might have to use that trump card and give approval for an export tax. If you want to talk about a trump card, that will instantly change the game. That sounds like the Premier of Ontario is frustrated with the positions of the Premier of Alberta. How should I interpret what Doug Ford said today?
No, I wouldn't interpret it as such. I think actually there's a great sense of cohesion and unification amongst the premiers. They really are working together, different parties, different regions, frankly, different economic interests.
He's trying to get her to agree with the idea of an export tax on oil and gas, isn't he? To drive up the price at the pump. He says that's the trump card that will change the game. It sounds like he's saying to Daniel Smith, you need to think about this.
Well, no, he didn't have to say that. She said it herself. He just simply echoed the message of the Premier of Alberta herself, that is an option, and I'll respect that is her decision for her province to make. But the Premier, I think, is signaling that we all have to use every lever available to us to maximize the pressure on Americans and minimize the impact on Canadians. And that's why he's using the LCBO. It's why he's imposing a $30 billion prohibition on procurement on American companies in the Ontario market alone. $30 billion of business that otherwise could have gone to America. And that, of course, includes the new 25% energy surcharge. It includes critical minerals not being sent into the U.S. markets. All of these will have impact. Maybe in isolation, these one-offs may not change the president's decision or calculus, but together, they are having an impact on the market and on Republican and Democratic decision makers in the South, in the Senate and the House, and at the governor's level. And we believe that is the best way to create pressure on the president to change course and to end this unjustified attack on his largest customer and Democratic partner.
No, as many pressure points as possible, it seems to be the strategy. Hit them in as many areas and ways that you can. I just wonder, as a final point, Minister, there is going to be a change in the leadership of the country in a matter of days with Mark Carney's victory Sunday night, and he'll be sworn in at some point this week officially as Prime Minister. What opportunity does that allow for a reset in terms of the relationship with the U.S.? I mean, do you see a change in the Prime Minister's office from Justin Trudeau to Mr. Carney as a helpful thing at this point in time, or more uncertainty in an uncertain time? How do you view it?
Well, I think it's a huge opportunity for Canada to reset relations, yes, with America, but also to reset our domestic economic policy and to zero in on some of the competitive disadvantages we have really imposed on ourselves. The Premier made clear the carbon tax has to be the first thing eliminated to reduce bills for families and businesses and remove the competitive disadvantage relative to America. Because as you know, David, capital will flow against the path of least resistance. We need to keep these jobs and businesses here. The second is we need to diversify our trade as a nation, move beyond the U.S. Over 80% of reliance on one customer clearly is insensible, and I think we've woken up as a country to this. And the third is we need to get our energy products to Tidewater and to foreign markets, and we need a serious plan with a serious national nation-building program that's going to get our resources to new markets, to Tidewater, and end the singular dependence on America, particularly when it comes to petroleum or natural gas.
So from the Ontario government's perspective, are you seeing that from Mr. Carney and what he's put on the table so far, Minister? Or do you need to see more? Where are you on that?
Well, we need to see action. I mean, those early words are one thing. We now need to see action. And to be fair, we're in the early hours
We
of this
sure are.
administration.
All right.
We'll work in good faith with the feds. I mean, come on. We'll work in good faith with every level. Whoever the people of Canada elect, I think Premier Ford has demonstrated he'll work with them. Look, we have a new Democratic mayor of Toronto. We have a Liberal mayor, a premier, a prime minister of Canada. We have new Democratic premiers in BC and Manitoba. The premier has worked very well with all of them. He'll continue to work well with them. That is what we do in a crisis. That's what the strength of Team Canada is about. And I'm proud, actually, if I could just say, David, as someone who's been an observer of politics for many years, I've never seen our country come together so strongly as today. And I hope we harness this for good in our fight for Canada. And we push back and use every lever available to make clear we're not going to take this lightly. And we're not just going to accept the insanity and the chaos that's coming from the U.S. So I'm actually very proud to be a Canadian, and I hope all levels of government continue to work together in the interests of Canada, our economy, and our sovereignty.
Okay, that's a good point to end this on. I want to thank you for your time, sir. It's Ontario Energy Minister Stephen Lecce.